This is Steve Young for the Co-Roundtable. Next year, 2026, will be the 250th anniversary of the publication of Adam Smith's book, telling us how to create the wealth of nations, and putting out there this concept of capitalism, which people have been appreciating and denigrating for, depending on your point of view, for 250 years. But Adam Smith's book, I think, and a number of my colleagues think, correctly predicted what was going to happen to humanity with this new system of running an economy, which he didn't really call capitalism at all. He used the word stock for all your assets, and then the parts of that stock that you employ, like even wages and to some extent, that becomes a capital, human capital or social capital or land or factory, something like that. Anyway, what got Smith excited about something new and different in his time was a rather simple little thing, and the pin factory. It was a small factory, roughly speaking, as he describes it, about 10 employees. Think of a production line, 18 different steps to make a straight pin, which I haven't seen in years, but my grandmothers used to have them because you use them when you sew. You pin the clothing together and then you sew it, right? Smith pointed out that these 10 people with special machines, pulling out the wire, putting on the head, sharpening the point, et cetera, could produce 48,000 pins a day. That's a lot of pins if you ask me. Whereas the previous, older, traditional, pre-capitalist method of a skilled person, say me, just myself, making pins, getting the wire, drawing it out, cutting it, putting the head, putting the start, et cetera, I could make maybe 200 pins a day. So if you divide the 48,000 by 10, that's 4,800 pins per worker. So what do you think happened to the price of pins in Scotland and England because of these factories? They crashed, right? Prices dropped way down because supply was going like this. Who benefited? The old question from the Roman Republic, cui bono? Who benefited? Well, I would think immediately a whole bunch of people who needed straight pins for sewing, including women, probably in those days, probably all women, in the middle class and in the lower class. Because as the price of pins dropped, their ability to buy pins and still have money left over for chickens and eggs and whatever, they could buy more pins. What made the difference? Smith was pointing to something called technological innovation. The various one, the idea of having a factory, but getting the machines, et cetera, et cetera. And if you think about it, ever since then, steam engines, electricity, computers, now we're talking about AI, airplanes, automobiles, cell phones, all these innovations, this technological change has created wealth. Now, for another talk, how does that wealth get divided among different people? But I just want to bring to your attention two new things about innovation, which tells me that Adam Smith's insight is still a truth for us today, 250 years later. First, Apple Company, cell phones. They've invented a new chip, their own chip, which goes inside the cell phone. I don't understand this technology at all. I just know there are chips in there and they're made here and there. And the more complicated the chip, the better the cell phone and the higher the price. And other companies with other technologies, they sell cell phones lower than the high-priced iPhones. So anyway, Apple's apparently going to sell its new cell phone with this new chip for $599, which is roughly half price of the older ones and very competitive with cell phones made in China and made on the Android system. So what's going to happen? More people, presumably, will be able to buy Apple iPhones. They'll be happier. Consumers they'll be pleased. Apple will not go out of business. Apple will be able to employ people. Apple will be able to pay dividends to the owners of its stock because of what? A technological innovation. Now let me shift to Microsoft. There's another story here. This one I really don't understand, but it comes out of the cutting edge thinking. Actually, what Adam Smith did in The Wealth of Nations is he set up an economic system to exploit science, our study, physics, biology, chemistry, rocks, waters, trees, agriculture. I mean, if we had to live the life that we lived 250 years ago, with the kinds of chickens, pigs, and grain and things like that they had then, and by the way, and no antibiotics, and no trained dentists and doctors, and no hospitals able to go in and operate on your heart, all that came about because we could take science, the learning of science, and turn it to good use. Well, Microsoft says in its research into quantum computing, it has created a new state of matter, which is some way that the way I try to think about this is that little atoms and particles and things like that, they're neither water nor gas, nor this nor that. They're something new. They are part of a real universe. They move in various ways, which apparently we can predict. We can put them together in some ways, and we can use their movements to replace silicon and other kinds of things to run our plus minus 0 1 system of using computers, of language. We reduce it down to these little sort of pluses and minuses, billions and billions of them, and we end up with videos, with thinking and all this kind of stuff. Microsoft has invented something. Will this make a great change in human living? I have no idea. But if it does, if it goes the way of other previous inventions, we see a dynamic system of creativity and invention, which can take ideas, turn them into products, and improve lives.